Whether you are feeling burnt out, overwhelmed, or that something isn't quite the way you know it can be, you are not alone. I hear the same from leaders every day. Good news, it's not your fault. The real issue isn't how skilled or experienced you are, it's that parts of you are tucked away, invisible, inaccessible. On Uncommon Leadership, we explore aligning personal fulfillment with business success, creating authentic teams, and cultivating the resilience necessary to move beyond simply surviving today's challenges into thriving. I'm Michael Hunter, and today we'll uncover fresh insights into what it means to lead with resilience. Joining me today is Garrett Delph. Garrett has 25 plus years of experience in building multiple worldwide scalable businesses that deliver high value, high profit, and bespoke scalable technology systems managed by humans. Roughly 15 of those years were devoted to building and managing both on prem and remote international teams. Garrett's core strengths are in architecting finely tuned organizational cultures, developing management leaders, and preparing business for growth and scale. Welcome, Garrett.
Thank you, Michael. It's really great to be here. Thanks for having me.
When did you first recognize that integrating your whole self and bringing that into everything you do, that might be a valuable approach?
Probably about, I think it really hit me about 5 years ago. Um, and that came on the heels of the chairman of one of my board of directors, probably 5 years before that, had sat me down one time and said, you know, hey, I've been doing this a long time and I've never seen anybody operate the way you do. And he said, I just want to tell you, I think you have, I think that's perhaps one of your superpowers. And I was like, thanks, man. Yeah. I didn't really think much of it. And then 5 years went by and started looking at things and I'm like, well, maybe. And then I recalled his compliment and thought, oh, maybe there is, by God's grace, maybe there is something here, that's unique and special.
What took you so long? There was the comment, 5 years go by, and all of a sudden this inspiration dawns. Like, what triggered that? What was going on in between that it hadn't quite sunk in?
I think between him saying that and then the following 5 years, we had some, in one of my businesses, some exponential growth and also exponential, challenges. And I had used some systematic frameworks that were homegrown that um, I applied. And over those, that season, and they worked really well. And I got a tremendous amount of great feedback from our leadership teams and also from customers. And so I think maybe that was the thing that made me associate the compliment with perhaps the truth of it, you know?
Were those business signals the feedback you were getting from customers and others you were working with? Did that change dramatically? What was it that told you, oh, there's something going on here to pay attention to?
Well, I think it was the nature of how quickly we were able to scale in the wake of our new go-to-market strategies. And that fastness was accelerated compared to other seasons of go-to-market, growth strategies. Simultaneously with the fast, we had less chaos, significantly less. So, that it was smooth and orderly, and teams had this new level of clarity is the feedback I was getting. And basically they were coming to me and saying, uh, hey, the quad core management system that we've been harping on? Um, hey, our MSM, maintain, support, and measure framework strategy? Hey, remember this thing that you brought to us years ago called Cornerstone? It's working. Like, that was basically the signal. It was the validation, audible validation from leaders that, like, I know we thought you were a weirdo, but we just want to tell you it's actually working. Those would be those are signals I remember as they led up to the aha moment.
So you get this comment from a client who says all these weird things you do, like, this is not what other people do. You got something special here. You- Like, okay, thank you. It sort of filters on past. And then over the next 5 years, you keep doing those same weird things. And you get more feedback telling you, and I'm saying weird because that's the word you used.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
um, Over the next 5 years, you keep doing those things, and you're getting kind of the same feedback, but rather than saying, "Hey, Garrett, you have something special here," they're saying, giving you specific, concrete details of this tool. This is really helping. This framework that you gave us, we didn't quite understand what that was at first, but once you helped us grok it, then it's just become the bedrock of what we do. And this was happening over and over and over with those same tools and frameworks and systems and things. And so then that's what then led you back to remember that, oh yeah, 5 years ago, this this person told me that we had something special. Now, but he didn't give me the concrete details I needed to understand what it was that he was referencing. So I didn't have anything to hang that comment onto.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's common, because operations are, especially, the for maybe the top of the small and then the lower side to the upper side of the medium sized business domains. You're talking 100 to 300 employees, maybe 400 employees, and the engine of success is very complex. And so the chairman that said that to me, he was, kind of classic executive founder mentality where he's just looking at outcomes. So he just goes, if those outcomes are awesome, then you're doing something really well internally. And that was sort of his gauge. And if the outcomes were not awesome, then I'm sure it wouldn't have been a compliment. It would have been something, different, you know.
Do you know for yourself, how much do you tend to focus on big picture versus details? Like, where in the along that spectrum does your happy place
Hmm.
tend to be?
Such a great question, Michael. Um, I think I spend more time in the micro, but it is always in direct proportion of spending 20% of my time at the macro, because you have to understand w- where you want to go and what outcomes you want in order to adjust all of the thousand moving parts in the engine room. But I would say that's definitely where I spend most of my time these days, in the micro. It's probably 80/20.
I was going to guess that you are on the detailed side of things because this client gave you a big picture feedback and it just blew right past
Yeah.
you because it
Yeah.
wasn't in your frame of reference. And then all the other kudos that you got from all these other people were detailed feedback. They're giving you kudos on all these specific details, and that fit right into your frame of mind.
Yeah. That's a good point. It is true. And it was the managing leaders that were giving me all of this micro feedback, because I think they begin to realize that, to the degree that what is historically known, as the messy middle, to the degree that all of that messiness becomes orderly, the managing leaders are the direct beneficiaries of that order. They're the direct beneficiaries of new focus, newfound strength, new agility, new speed. Also, they become also a sounding board for all of the people they lead, who become sounding boards for how they're benefiting. So it's like this cascade effect, and most businesses are just so accustomed to operating in a messy way, in a chaotic way, that they just, it's status quo. They just learn to live with all of the stresses and the pressures and the angst that comes with living that kind of environment. And what ended up happening is radical transformation internally, which was just like everybody was so blown away. Like, we can actually do business this way. This is freaking amazing. And then I'd hear stories continually from the different levels about when I used to work here, when I used to work there, when I worked here. Like, this was never possible. Wasn't even on anybody's radar. And clearly, this is a new way, and that was pretty darn exciting. Go back to the weird thing. If anything, it empowered me to be a little bit more weird, I think, and go like, okay, I
Yeah.
definitely, because there's so to bring new ideas to the market, or new ideas to an org or operation, that are brand new. You get it. Like, mostly you're faced with rejection, because humans tend to reject things they don't understand, especially if they're not proven. And if there's a big bet here to put a bunch of time and energy and resources into a new way, and it's a full-on bushwhack path, so that was very challenging and scary, and met with a ton of resistance early on. That's kind of all the weird word unpacked.
That's a perfect lead into my next question, which is, how do you build cultures where the teams and people that you're working with, you're brought in to help be more efficient, effective, scalable, where they feel safe and empowered to bring their unique talents into everything that they're doing?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a really great question, Michael. And I've thought a lot about it. There is a critical path first step to providing clarity and safety to employees, vertically and horizontally in the org chart. And that first step is whoever is at the top, whoever the head of the org is. That could be CEO, could be founder, president. They must be clear about what the safety and empowerment is and looks like. And they must be motivated to go all in for the business to make it happen. I'm reminded of Jeff Weiner, ex-CEO at LinkedIn. I heard him say probably 8 or 10 years ago, which still sticks to me this day. His job as the leader in that org, as the CEO, is to be the chief reminder officer, which I just love. And then he goes on to say, my primary role is to constantly remind everybody and myself about where we're going and how we're going to get there. And I won't spend too much more time on it, but he even unpacks it further and talks about he has to constantly remind the company about what they value. And so that's the first thing. First step is that decision has to be made at the top. From there, it's just all about architecture. I call it P3: people, process, and performance, in that order. And so once you decide, we want a safe place for people, we want high happiness, low stress, and high productivity, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to architect for the people in a way that demonstrates our care for them. And so we're going to make sure that you have employee handbooks that answer all of your questions and manage all of your expectations in a published fashion. We're going to have core values that are not just sayings on the wall, but permeate into all of the functions in the business, into all of the breakout teams, into everything we do. We're going to live by these core values. We're going to actually, as a business, create and constantly update our career path strategy. So when you show up as an employee, you are you have a path to growth in title and pay if you want it. We will support it, and we will uphold that and maintain it. Um, other empowerment and safety. I think going back to the core values thing. Um, Part of safety in an org, in my opinion, for employees is the human side. It's like the human side of stuff, like um, protecting people from being blamed, protecting people from being gossiped about, protecting the business and the people from a culture of lying. Uh, these parts, I think, also I would contend should be upheld by the leadership and guard employees from drive-by guiltings and drive-by shootings in these facets. Another way to create great safety and empowerment for people is razor sharp, clear job descriptions that also, at the end of the activities from that job description, define what success looks like. So people know where they stand and they know what a mark of success looks like on the daily, on the weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. And then probably one other thing I'd mention, and there are many, but I think this is really important, is employee surveys and doing that on the regular. There's different opinions about the best play here, but I'm a big fan of anonymous surveys, not because you're fearful that people don't have the freedom to say their name or say who they are, but I think when you can just have the total freedom to say how you feel and not have to disclose your name or your title, then the truth comes out. And then having leadership that receive this information and will act on it to iterate towards better health, etc. So these are some things that I would recommend in terms of how to create safety and empowerment in people.
How long is the feedback cycle typically as you're making these changes from you come in or the leadership announces we're going to do this, like all the things you just talked about, which are big, like huge life
Yes,
business changing shifts,
they are.
and that employees are likely saying, uh-huh, yep, it's been about 6 months,
Yes.
time for another of these.
Right. Or they're going, yeah, sure. Been there, done that, seen it, never worked.
Right. So what's the typically the feedback cycle for you from when all this starts and then when people start seeing, oh my gosh, it's actually changing this time?
Yeah. Well, that varies surely in direct proportion to the nature of the engagement. Lots of different levels and investments to get there. But if I were just to assign a mean, I'd say 6 months to look back and see significant transformation in these areas. That said, what I always try to do is remind along the journey and highlight and campaign and market the wins and the proof of positive change. And to do that, obviously, integrated into leadership, but then also I ask the heads to ask their leaders to pass along the same campaign metrics to the people they're leading as well. So you begin this sort of snowball effect of the micro changes along the way as they build up to that 6 month mark, for example. That way, people are mindful of the changes that they're experiencing and seeing.
And do you do anything to proactively bring along all the doubters and naysayers? Or do you focus on the people who are engaged right from the start? They love the change or they love the vision and help them and let the other people come along as they start seeing the benefits.
Yeah, there have been a few times in the executive sessions where you have, naysayers, and I try to not get involved in those politics. What I do is I'll just keep note and keep it on my radar. If I see that perhaps you have people that are challenging or in disagreement, or whatever it is they're facing, and then I'll go to whoever hired me, and typically it's somebody at the head, and just say, hey, here's a potential risk call out. There may be an opportunity to kind of have a one-on-one and figure out where that's coming from. But that's what I'm seeing. Of course, you should validate that. Uh, but I haven't seen it to the degree where I need to kind of step up and start having those conversations. I think it's happened a few times at max.
As you are introducing these changes and then as they progress, how much are you focusing on all the signals that you talked about initially of safety and uh, joy and things like that? And how much are you focusing on or highlighting the shifts in all the typical business metrics of revenue, call volume, whatever the metrics are that that business is caring about?
Really great question. So the signals early on I pay attention to are, first, just confirmation and validation from the business leaders that the C suite nominate to participate in the transformation. And look to get a consensus across the board that, hey, these are the problems and challenges we're looking to solve and transform. From then, I like to validate those through survey to the rest of the company and see if there is alignment, so that survey is built based on the problems and challenges the leadership has diagnosed. And then I seek to validate those. I like the word signal, by the way, through surveying that is in line with those, and see if the people come back and validate. If they don't, then we circle back to the leadership and say, all right, here's the feedback we're getting. It seems that there's some disagreement here, what have you. So we quickly iterate there to finalize the problems and the opportunities. And then, a couple of outcomes I typically like to focus on is gross profit, because, historically, people hire me. So this is interesting, Michael. Most business owners and leaders don't want to solve culture problems just for the sake of solving culture problems. This is what I found, which surprised me, because I was always not, I was the opposite. I was like just crazy allergic to bad culture and chaos. And so my motivation was just to solve those, irrespective of what they did to revenue and to sales. But what I found is most businesses, they're struggling to scale. Their gross profits are down. They have, they're losing people. Their customers are being affected. So they want to solve the problems. So my whole point there was, typically they're struggling with revenue. Their revenue's gone down, and they're struggling with CSATs. Their CSATs have gone down. And so those are two big markers that I'll go after in terms of signals of success. Did the gross profit go up because we went in and found a bunch of inefficiency and waste? We optimized that inefficiency and waste, and now you're faster, you're leaner, and your cogs are less. And And so typically when you solve those, costs go down, profit goes up, and because you have now better control around your outcomes, specifically in product or service, and they're probably being delivered faster too, your CSAT start going up. So those are the two signals I look for the business outcomes. And then culturally, two things. I'll go back to the survey. So I'm a big fan of these anonymous surveys because people tell the truth because they don't have to worry about identifying. And then the other is I like to get in and do skip levels. So to the degree that the business thinks that it's okay with them for me personally to go in and participate, I'll just do some Q&A. And just kind of really matter of fact, unemotionally attached, start popping around and getting the lay of the land and seeing what people are actually saying if they're willing to share. So there's two business outcome signals I like to focus on, and then those two internal cultural signals I like to focus on.
All of this brings, even when the shifts are relatively small, you're still bringing so much change into everyone's lives.
Yeah.
Some of them
Yeah.
probably feel it's being inflicted on them. Others might welcome it, or I
Uh-huh.
don't know. And this is on top of all of the change, uncertainty, overwhelm that has already been there in the business. It's everywhere else around us, it seems, without end these days. How do you help all these people find their way through all this in a way that feels safe and comfortable enough to them that they can handle all this?
Yeah. It's tricky, Michael. And so for obviously I, I have finite resources in terms of my personal time. And so I reserve most of my energy and focus for the leader that hired me and the leaders that they are um, locking arms with to facilitate the change throughout the org. That's where I put my primary focus. And so my message there constantly is, listen, this is an expectations management game. This is all about integrity. Actually, use an acronym called PI. If you want to be a great leader, and my encouragement to them as we go through the transformation journey is you need to rise up as leaders, and it needs to be as easy as pie. You need to be professional, and we define what a professional is. You've got to be a great planner. You need to be organized. You need to be clear. I stands for integrity. So you got to do what you said you would do and what you promised you would do. So you got to keep showing up in that way. You have to be dependable, faithful, timely. Those first two alone give any leader major street cred and respect in the org. Just as a side note, there's a great book called The $1 Trillion Coach about Bill Campbell. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was the executive coach to the big guys, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Schwartz, who's the CEO of Google. So anyways, he said, you cannot be a great leader unless you first demonstrated you were a great manager. And that is just all about the pie. And so, be professional, have integrity. And then lastly, E stands for EQ. You have to be emotionally intelligent as a leader too. And you have to, along with the accountability you bring from the professional side, you also have to have grace and care and sympathy and empathy. And so if you wrap pie into your output as you move into transformation, my message to leaders is you will get the respect that you need and you will create the safety you want. But you have to be it first. And then you just keep showing up with your pie, with your slice of pie. You keep showing up. And over time, you will prove to them, not say to them, you will prove to them this is a safe place. What tactically, like, you're like, all right, how does this tactically work? Well, for example, the new transformation from an old culture to a new operationally is you don't as the new leader, there's no blaming of employees for not achieving outcomes. There's going to employees and looking at the new rails that were architected, the new processes that were architected, the new SOPs that were architected for what a job description does. And together with your employee that looks like maybe they're falling short, you take your eye off of them, and now you both put your eyes on the process. And we look at the process together and figure out what happened in the process that we built that caused the outcome to not be what it should be. And now we've taken our eye as a leader, we take our eye off. I'm like, I'm pointing my finger at you because you failed. And we get to analogize, and then they'll self-select. The person that's being led will go, oh, okay, yeah, I see. I didn't do this. I didn't, right? And so there's an example of a tactical application of providing safety in a new culture where the old way was you did a bad job, you're bad, and you redirect the tactic for a more safe approach. So there's just like one tactic of many in terms of establishing safety.
And when that doesn't work, where do you go from there?
Yeah, well, give me context around like what are you thinking didn't work in that scenario, and then I'll do my best to answer it.
So you do all the things you just
Yeah.
took us through, and the person you're working with, or somewhere, all of the people under them still don't feel safe.
Oh, still don't feel safe. Okay. And are we assuming that the leadership got it right? They're professional, they have integrity, they have empathy, but the employee has a problem with still feeling safe?
That that's half of the question, and the other half is, what if after all of this, the leader still doesn't feel safe to make these changes in how they have been, so that they can't
Oh,
model that new way of being that is going to radiate out to everyone else.
yeah. It's great. So based on this use case that you're sharing, if I were being hired to advise the scenario, I would go back to what did the top of the org decide what was best for the business and its people? And if the top of the org decided this is our new future because of all of the benefits it's going to give us, and they're finding that a leader is incapable of adopting the new, strategic components of what is, behavior that provides for a safe environment, and the business has done its part to set up that leader for success and give them every opportunity to transform, and they still won't, then I would advise the head, I think you perhaps are in a situation now where the leader that you used to have that was in the messy middle is not suited for your future. And so you're going to have to make a call. Are you going to permit that and hear the consequences of permitting, allowing the old way to try to coexist with the new? Or do you want to come up with perhaps a, a new plan to make sure that your goal for the new future of safety, let's call it, cultural safety, is upheld and established? Because, change is hard. I think your question is valid. There's going to be leaders that, irrespective of the business actually hitting a home run on setting everybody up for success, there's still going to be leaders that disagree, aren't capable, don't like it. All of these things are in bounds in terms of the kind of responses that might be given by leadership. I'm reminded when there are takeovers in organizations by CEOs, and they come in, and what do? They generally clean house, clean leadership house, because they understand, or at least a seasoned CEO that takes over understands, often change is so difficult for leaders that have already been in the old culture that to get them to transform into the new is nearly impossible. Uh, and or the runway needed, the amount of time and energy and resources needed to convert them is not sustainable. And so what do? They take people that from their old regime that trust them and know them, they bring them in and then clean house, you know? So that's not something, I'm suggesting I would advise, but I'm just sharing that, as a sort of standard thing that happens because of because transformational change is difficult. Yeah.
And it raises the point that some people are not going to fit or want to fit into the new culture. And that's okay. And then it's,
Yeah, I love
as
that.
you said, it's up to the leader to decide, am I okay having people who aren't going to be part of this new culture still hanging around,
Yeah,
which will have benefits and
that's
will
right.
have downsides? Or do I want to help them find a new position inside the company or outside the company where they will be
Yeah.
a perfect fit? And then things will be so much better for them and for us because neither of us have this added friction going on between them and the rest of the company.
Yeah,
Managers,
that's
leaders
spot on.
can get locked into this idea that any attrition is bad attrition. Like, obviously, if they're doing horrible, we don't want them around, but still, I should be able to make everyone like my idea of perfect. And the reality is, no, we all have different strengths. And if what
Yeah.
you are uniquely great at isn't something that the company needs right now, if the way that you want to work isn't the way that the company wants you to work, then
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
finding you somewhere else where you can use your unique gifts and work in the way that you want to work is probably way better for everyone. And that's
Yes.
actually being a way better manager and leader than trying to fit them into this new regime.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm totally with you, and I think, simultaneously, to play devil's advocate, that often is really difficult, because like we have a new engagement here, uh, just up the freeway, working with a construction company, and as we're getting into transformation, they have a key leader that is in charge of a division within the company that is bespoke to painting, right? And part of the transformation is they don't have a succession plan. They have not had a succession plan in place. And so they have a leader that's struggling to transform into the new future that the CEO wants. And the threat there is he may leave if the CEO is stout about the requirement for cultural and operational change. But if he leaves because he's never invested in a succession plan, he doesn't have anybody in the company that can fulfill that SME position, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a real life conundrum where it's not as easy as just going, all right, well, if you disagree, then, let's try to find you another place in another company where you do fit, because it could, financially harm the business when it comes to that
Right.
part of their service, So it's like, I think you and I both agree it'd be nice just to wave a magic wand and solve these problems just like that. But now when you get into these delicate situations, you have to really be strategically, you got to really strategically finesse the scenario and work with it and come up with win-wins. you know.
That's a great example of how it's often not a yes or no answer. That
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
willing to put up with it or I'm not willing to put up with it. And that there's almost always it's somewhere in between there. And so then where do we go from that? Do we go to
Yeah.
the person and say, I know you aren't really happy with the direction we're going. This is the direction we're going. I value you being here. Uh, want you to stick around. How can we make this work together? That oftentimes can be very productive. And sometimes it's making the potentially even more challenging or harder decision to say, well, I'm just going to put up with this bird in my saddle because that's what's best for the company. And I know it's dragging other employees down in these ways, and I'm going to pay that cost. Or conversely, saying,
Yeah.
I know that helping them leave is going to hurt the company short term, and I know that long term it's worth it. So I'm going to pay the short term. And now, how do I buffer against the cost that that's going to be?
Yeah. Yeah. I love the question and the use case because you know, it really opens up a can of real life scenario when it comes to these concepts of establishing safety and creating cultural and operational transformation. Like, you know, let's explore for a second, if you don't mind.
Mhm.
The CEO says to this person, this leader, "All right, well, I appreciate. Hey, let's come up with a hybrid. Let's do a win-win. That way, we're going to safeguard the company from losing a great person, and we're going to safeguard the revenue that's attached to that, and all of the customers that depend on that service that's attached to that. And so, if it just stopped there, we'd be like, oh, well that's great. We totally avoided a catastrophe here, and everybody's winning. Except for actually, there's more. What about the the mixed signal it sends to the rest of the leaders who bought in to the CEO's vision? And so now you have one person that gets to do whatever they want in a hybrid fashion. And then you have all of the other leaders and employees going, okay, the CEO just made consolation for one person, and then they'll connect the dots. Now respect for the CEO goes down. And now they distrust the vision. So now you end up in this culture debt situation potentially, right? And that's really tricky. Right? So we went from, oh, we got a win-win scenario. Perfect. I'm like, oh, wait, hold on. There are unintended consequences here.
Yes. In ideal situation, you can be open about what's going on and let everyone in on what the full calculus is here so that they can understand that. And
Yeah.
even then you still have the potential for everyone like those gears start turning like, well, I'm unique in this. I have unique
Right.
value to the company in this way. So that means I can now leverage that and doing whatever I want. And suddenly you have a million people going in a million different directions.
Yeah. I can tell you what I would advise if you're
Yes,
interested.
please.
I would advise the CEO going to this person and saying, I know this is tough for you, but we've been working together for a long time. I value you. I really do. We have to go in this direction. Would you trust me and would you try this way for 6 months and see and let's you and I stay in constant contact. But would you consider just trying for 6 months and let's see what happens? Then what I would do is I would advise the CEO to go start planning in the background in the event this doesn't work out and start lining up potential candidates, qualifying potential candidates, and have them in the wings in the event that he needs to send somebody in because it doesn't work out. That's what I would advise. because then you don't compromise the vision, and you don't create accidental culture debt. You also give somebody an honest opportunity to lean in. Maybe it's even attached to an incentive. I don't know. Right? Maybe not. But then you're also responsible to protect the business, in the background. So that's what I would advise.
So if I were to paraphrase, you're saying treat this the same as any other performance problem with an employee. Where you make clear
Based on the
these are
new
the
vision.
expectations. This is where we're going. I'd love to have you come along with us. Really value everything that you bring and the relationship we've built up over time. Will you please give it a try? And then it's up to them. If they say yes,
Yeah.
great. Worst case, 6 months down the road, you're back to having well, this isn't working out discussion. In the best case, they've come along far enough, if not all the way to the vision, there's not an issue anymore.
Yeah. And I think I would advise the CEO to campaign a little bit there, knowing the nature of the relationship. I'd say, like, hey, bring to the table all of the different ways during their relationship that you have proven to this leader that you are faithful, dependable, timely, and trustworthy. And campaign with those, and if they're true, let's assume they're true, and then be earnest with your ask. Like, yeah, I would advise them to be earnest and say, I'm actually asking for a favor here, because I really think you're going to be better, and I'm going to be better, and everybody you lead, they're going to be better at the end of this transformation. And I know you can't see it right now, but would you trust me? Because I want to work with you. And there are huge benefits in compensation, in growth, in scale, in job title as we progress into the future, but we got to go this way. Would you join me? Could we try it out? I'd recommend a full-on campaign, because this is somebody that they really like and trust and have loved working with. So there's a great relationship there, at least in the use case that I'm referring to.
Yeah. If someone would like your help running that campaign, or even just to go a little deeper into the P3s that you mentioned earlier, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you? Get more details on those 3 Ps.
Oh yeah, thanks, Michael. Well, it'd be my privilege. It's like Disneyland for me. So they can find me. Anybody can find me on LinkedIn. Garrett Delph is my handle, or they can go to clarityops.co. That's my website. And between those two places, I'm here.
Sounds great. What would you like to leave our audience with today?
I would leave this: the management of expectations, operationally and culturally, in a business are the best gift you can give your people, and the best gift you can give the future success of your business. And to the degree that you plan for and manage expectations vertically and horizontally, I really believe will be the degree to which you get the success that you want, and get it in a way that is more smooth than you would have otherwise.
Perfect. Thank you, Garrett, for being on Uncommon Leadership today.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael, for having me. It's been really great. I've enjoyed the conversation.
It's been a great conversation. And thank you, audience, for being with us today. What is the success that you want? What's holding you back from having that? Garrett and I would love to know. Thanks, and have a great day.